One of the things we spoke about when we were learning about Purim was that in 1953, Toshin Gimel, there was a new crisis coming up in Russia, and that was called the Doctor's Plot, where Stalin started to accuse Jewish doctors, and there were a lot of Jewish doctors, that they're poisoning political people. And based on that, they started to arrest doctors, Jewish doctors, send them off to a camp. And the plan was to start with the doctors and eventually send off all Jews and Rahman Islam to do in Russia the same thing that Hitler did. This was Stalin. So he, and then I told you the story that Farbrengen of Purim, the Rebbe said a mimer, unexpected. The Rebbe told a story before the mimer. The story was how this chassid went to vote. It was after the fall of the Tsar, and there was communism, and they were supposed to go vote. And then there was the chassid who joined everybody else by screaming "Hurrah!" And the Rebbe said "Hurrah" 3 times and put his hands like this. It was all very like sort of what we call the Baal Shem Tov kind of things happening that no one understood. But then a few days later, he was gone. He was dead. No one knows what happened, whether they poisoned him, which is very common in Russia, or some said he had a stroke, but he was gone. And right after he was gone, they pulled back everything. And all the people that were arrested went back home, and the crisis was over. That was 1953. Well, the Rebbe would say a mimer. The Rebbe did not edit the mimer. So whatever came out was based on the memory of the people that heard the mimer, which was called Chizrim. In 1991, in honor of Purim, the Rebbe edited this mimer that he said in 1953. In 1991, again something happened, which was the war with Iraq, who also threatened in a very similar way that he's going to destroy all of Israel. He's going to send missiles, and Rahman Islam do what he wanted, just like Haman. And he lost that war. And the day that he lost the war, the day that victory was announced, was on Purim. That was Tavshin Nun Aleph. And now again, on Purim, we see this miracle happening again with another Haman. By the way, that everyone by Farbrengen said that his name, Hamania, it actually has the same letters as the word Haman in it. So apparently there is a connection there. But his plans are definitely no different than the plans than Haman, which is to wipe out, God forbid, every single Jew. And when the Rebbe gave out a mimer, he would choose a date. Even if the mimer was ready to be printed on this day, the Rebbe would choose a date, sometimes an earlier date, sometimes a later date. There was something about the date of the mimer. So the date of this mimer was June Aleph Adar. And that's the day that this war began. So again, there are 3 levels of people, 3 attitudes of people. One is that people feel this is a country that was a threat. They constantly threaten to, God forbid, annihilate. Rahman al-Islam. I don't want to bring it out of my mouth. And we know they weren't only a threat to Yidden, they were a threat to the whole world, to America, to other countries. Basically, they have a plan. Their plan is that they would take over the whole world, and be only their religion, and everybody else would disappear or take upon themselves their religion. So the threat was removed. That's number one. Then there are people who realize this is not just an amazing thing that the army, the Israeli army, the American army, they see clearly the miracles. It's a miracle. That's such a force like Iran. Everybody was afraid of them. And we see all the presidents were all trying to appease them and work with them. No one took the kind of step that he took. That's a miracle. But as a Chabad Chassid, we take it a step further, 3rd level. It's not just a miracle, but these are the miracles that are related to Gula Mitzvah Shlema. And there's so many sources that popped out after this, clearly where it says in Gemara, before Mashiach comes, Persia will fall into the hands of Rome. So America is Edom from Rome, and Persia is Iran. That's what it is. So these are all miracles based on what the Rebbe told us, that everything that's happening now with the different countries is all part of the process of Mashiach coming. So besides the fact that the Rebbe also pointed out to look how things are happening now, which are similar when they went out of Mitzrayim. Right before they went out of Mitzrayim, there was a miracle which was called the Makim Mitzrayim B'Vchareim. So Shabbos before Pesach is called Shabbos HaGodel, the big Shabbos. What's the reason? Because there was a big miracle that happened that day. What was the big miracle? That the Egyptians themselves made a revolution against Egypt. They heard that the 10th plague is coming, and all the firstborn are going to be killed. So all the firstborn gathered together, and they started protesting, and Egypt didn't like it, so it broke out into a war. So there was a war between the firstborn of the Egyptians and the government. And it says in Shulchan Aruch, this war was like the beginning of breaking Mitzrayim, and then the next thing that happened was the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. So we're seeing the same thing now, that what's happening and how this began to happen is because the people of this country, they themselves started to protest against what's going on, and that's what is leading to their total downfall. Again, I don't know if you're keeping up with the news. I don't know if anybody here knows the word Hormuz. It's a strange word. Anybody ever heard that word before? Very strange word. But it's a lot on the news. And why is it a lot on the news? Because there's a place where all the boats that carry merchandise for trade, oil, they have to pass through a certain spot, which is called the Straits of Hormuz. It's a narrow spot. And Iran is sort of tries to control that place. And quite a few times they threatened that they're going to close it and block it off. Nobody should be able to go there. Thank you. Anyway, so I have it downstairs in the office, but also a sefer, which is called Kli Poz, has a commentary on Tillim. And he writes there that before Mashiach comes, there's going to be a place called Hormuz. Hey, Vav, Reish, Mem, Zayin. And that's where the Milchama of Gog and Magog is going to break out before Mashiach comes. So everything is pointing in that same direction. Yeah. The war itself is going in a very miraculous way. Like yesterday they asked Trump, on a scale from 1 to 10, how do you think the war is going? And his answer was 15. Because they say they're way ahead of schedule. Because the first missile that was shot into Iran was shot in the place where Khomeini was, with 40 other people, and they said these 40 people were on their list. And according to their plan, it would have taken 2 weeks to eliminate them. They were all eliminated in 40 seconds. So you see that the Eibush is performing miracles here. And what it means for us is that we, first of all, Yidden are still in danger because there's still missiles, and unfortunately, people have died. But I think the miracle is that you hear constantly on the news how, just this morning also, how missiles fell, didn't explode, or the different things that happened. I'll pretend that it could have been and should have been much more, unfortunately, casualties or injured people. And Baruch Hashem was not happening, not by America and not by Israel. So we should continue to see the miracle. But the main thing is we should see the results of the miracle, which is going out of Golis. That this is of course, many people will also relate this to Amalek, that they have in them all the characteristics of Amalek. So this is the one of the things that it says, that before Mashiach comes, we'll see the elimination of Amalek. Okay, let's cover a few things that we left with for Purim. Okay, one of them is number 7 on the list. But the Gemara goes into the question, what is it that the Yidden did in the time of Purim that they deserved this kind of punishment? Again, we know that this wasn't just that Haman, that who was a very big anti-Semite, he was from Amalek, so he decided to do something to the Yidden. Obviously, there was a decree in heaven. And because there was a decree in heaven, that's why someone down here had the thought to do what he wanted to do. And therefore, Mordechai came to the Yidden and told them they have to do tshuva. And by them doing tshuva, things were reversed. But the Gemara asked, what sin did they do that because of that they deserve this kind of punishment of total annihilation? And by the way, it's a kind of a punishment that we don't find it anywhere in history, not before and not after. When the Yidden were in Mitzrayim, they were persecuted, they were working hard, but not annihilation. Throughout all the other generations, whether it was Rome or Babylon or Spain or Majeski in Ukraine, all these other countries, these were local people who lived in this country were in danger, but there were Jews living in other countries. In fact, it says Hashem spread Jews out all over the world, that if there's a decree in one country, there'll be those surviving in another country. But at this time, all Jews were under Achashverosh. He ruled over the whole world at that time, all 127 countries. And therefore, if this would have gone through, it would have affected every single Jew. That means that in heaven there was such a decree. What did they do it? So one opinion says, because they went to the party and they ate non-kosher food. And the Rebbe asked, but where do we find that eating non-kosher food is such a punishment? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that eating non-kosher food is punishable by death altogether. There's another opinion that says because they bow down to an idol of Nebuchadnezzar. So then the Gemara asks a question, but that should have only affected those Jews who lived in Shushan and they attended the party. Not all Jews who lived in 127 countries were there and did that. There's another opinion that one of the things that happened by the party was that he boasted and he showed them the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, Babylon was the one who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. They took a lot of the vessels from the Beis HaMikdash in their possession. And here he was out of the party boasting, here, look, we have the vessels, basically boasting about the victory of Babylon and the defeat of the Jewish people, the defeat of the Beis HaMikdash. So the fact that the Jews were there and they were celebrating together with them, it means that they were sort of celebrating the humiliation of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rebbe says it's a terrible thing, but still, does that deserve total annihilation? And that also doesn't involve everybody, only those who were by the party. It goes on with different explanations, but what is the answer? And this is the essence of the answer. The essence of the answer is that Al Pi Teva, following laws of nature, there's no way that we could survive. The Gemara uses the mashal, kivsa achas ve'shivim ze'evim. Imagine 70 wolves are surrounding one little sheep. Does that sheep have any chance al pi teva? No way. And that's us. We're the smallest in numbers. We don't have the kind of power that they have. And throughout all the thousands of years, we were one sheep among 70 nations. So how did we exist? And the answer is we existed in a way which is a ma'alim ha'teva, a way which is above nature. That Hashem has his eyes upon us, like it says, he has his eyes upon the land. He has his eyes upon Yidden, and he has his eyes upon Yidden in a way that he allows us to survive and to live in a way which is above nature. But if we would follow the laws of nature, then there's no way we could survive. What happened the Rebbe explained, what happened at times of Purim wasn't a punishment. Yidden did something to themselves which naturally led to the fact that they could no longer exist. What is that? There was a party, and everybody went to the party. B'chlal, it says that in that time in history, there was unfortunately a lot of assimilation. Basically, the Jews expected the Beis Hamikdash to be rebuilt, that they go back to Eretz Yisrael, and it didn't happen. So they came to the conclusion that the prophecy about the Beis Hamikdash is not going to be fulfilled. And therefore, the next thing that they came to, the next mistake that they made was, if we can beat them, then join them, which means if we're not going to be able to have our own country, we have to live forever amongst these people, we'll never survive. You might as well enjoy life and be like everybody else. And unfortunately, there was a lot of assimilation. And when they came to the party, it's not just that they went to the party, they celebrated the fact that they were at the party, they were invited to the party, they considered it an honor that Achashverosh, the king, invited them to their party. And basically, what it means is like this. In reference to Yidden, it says, Ata rechatanu mikol ha'am, Hashem, you chose us from amongst the nations. And therefore, what should make me proud is not that Achashverosh chooses me, but that Hashem chose me. At that time, what led to the assimilation was because they felt we're a nation like all other nations. We're like everybody else. And the fact that the king invited us, that made them proud. Which means what was going on at that time, which was the sort of the essence of where things went wrong, was actually their attitude more than something practical that they did. Their attitude was that they perceived themselves like everybody else, and they perceive themselves that therefore they could be proud from the fact that the king invited them and they're able to rub shoulders with all the people in the government and in the country. And once they did that, it's in a sense what they did was they belong in a different realm, in the realm which is above nature. What they did with because everything that happens to us depends on our avodah. By having the wrong attitude, they sort of took themselves out of the realm of above nature, and they put themselves into the realm of nature. Once they're in the realm of nature, there's no way that they could survive. And that's what happened. Yeah.
So as a natural consequence, that also took out the people, like the children that didn't participate in the party.
Why the children is another question. I don't know. That's a good question. But at least we can explain also the people that live in other countries, because they all had this erroneous perception and attitude. In other words, if it was the fact that they physically violated this avera, that avera, we have a good question. It doesn't say anywhere that for this avera, that avera, there's such a severe punishment. But the answer, it's almost like not because they violated an avera, it's because they took themselves out. As long as we recognize and acknowledge that we are under Hashem's protective wings because we belong to a realm which is above nature, then we're in that place. But imagine, if you have to cross a river, and the river is full of all sorts of dangerous crocodiles or whales or sharks, all sorts of dangerous fish, and there's no way you can get across. And someone comes along and says, hop on my helicopter, I'll take you across. It's great. But what if I decide to get off the helicopter and go through the water? If I go through the water, I have to deal with everything that's in the water. And that's what the Yidden did. Hashem says, I'm carrying you on a cloud. I'm carrying you with a above nature bracha. And you are taking yourself, how do we take ourselves out? The mere fact that I don't perceive myself as different. I don't perceive myself that I am connected to above nature. That alone puts me back into the realm of nature. In the realm of nature, we can't exist. I don't know if you ever had a chance to learn that Sikha. The Rebbe asked a similar question with Esther Hamalka. She said that everybody should fast. And she said she'll also fast. For how many days? 3 days. And then I asked the question. Al Pi Teva, the natural reason why King Ahasuerus chose her was because she found favor in his eyes because of her physical beauty. If she's going to fast for 3 days and then she's going to approach Ahasuerus, it's the opposite. She's not going to look her best, and it might affect the fact that he won't be attracted to her. She won't be attracted to him. So why did she fast for 3 days? And basically, the Rebbe's answer is because ultimately she knew that the decree doesn't come from Achashverosh and it doesn't come from Haman. The decree comes from Hashem. And therefore, the real answer to that is davening, learning, tzedakah, and in this case, fasting. They have to do things, do tshuva, and that'll change the decree. That'll reverse things. But you have to do things in the natural order. So in the natural order, she went to approach the king. But what she did was you saw the combination of both. On one hand, you have to fast because that's what's going to bring the bracha from Shemayim. On the other hand, you have to approach the king because you have to go through the natural way that things happen. But we have to remember that everything is the fact that we can exist amongst the nation of the world, the fact that we can exist physically, and the fact that we can exist and thrive spiritually is only because of the fact that we're connected to something which is above nature. And the next thing I wanted to touch on is, let me see, there's something a little bit easier than that before we go to this one. Yeah. Take a look at number 3 on the page. V'kibla Yehudim, Eis asher achedu lases. Number 3 on the list. There's 2 psukim. One is number 3. I don't think they have the other pasuk here. But there's another pasuk which is similar. And the Gemara says, what does it mean they accepted upon themselves? What do they accept upon themselves? And the Gemara says an interesting thing, that Purim happened exactly 1,000 years after the Torah was given. And when the Torah was given, there was something which was incomplete. What was incomplete? Because to a certain extent, they accepted the Torah because they were being forced to. Hashem, it says, lifted the mountain. He held it over their head. And he said, if you accept the Torah, good. In fact, it says he held it over the head like a upside down barrel. Gigis. And he said, if you accept the Torah, good. If not, I'm dropping this mountain right here, and everyone's going to be buried right here. And they all enthusiastically shouted, Nasa v'nishma, we're accepting the Torah. So because they did it by force, it was something about it was not complete. And then 1,000 years later, in the times of Purim, they accepted it willingly. And because they accepted it willingly, that means at this point, it was the completion of what was started way before. These are the meaning of the words. The Kibla Yehudim, look at number 3, the Yidden accepted upon themselves, Eis asher echelu lases, what they began to do. I think I also made a copy of the pasuk. Let me see if I have it here or not. If not, we'll just. But there's another pasuk in the. No, I don't have it here. Where it also says something similar to that. So they received the Torah 1,000 years earlier, but it was incomplete, and this was the sort of the completion and the culmination of receiving the Torah. So there's a few questions. The first question is the whole thing that Hashem held a mountain over them, and they accepted the Torah because He threatened them. So what's so amazing about the whole thing that they accepted the Torah? Not only that, we make a big issue out of Nasa v'nishma, they said, we will do and we will listen. What's the big issue if it was done because they were forced? That's question number one. Question number two is, in the time of Purim, they were also forced. Why did they do tshuva? Because there was a decree of total annihilation. So therefore they turned to Hashem and they did tshuva. So that's like the same thing. What's the difference if it's a mountain that's over their head or it's Haman that's over their head? The same thing. There was something over their head, and therefore they were aroused to do tshuva and change. So the way it's explained in Chassidus, by the way, number 4 on the list, that's the Lashon of the Gemara. Kafa aleim har kegigas. He turned the mountain over them like a gigas, like a barrel, like a turned over barrel. So the way it's explained in Chassidus is as follows. It says in Gemara that Avraham Avinu, when he talked about the Beis Hamikdash, he referred to it as a mountain. Har HaMoriah, the Mount Moriah. When Yitzhak was talking about the Beis Hamikdash, he referred to it as a field. It says Yitzhak came and he prayed in the field, it's referring to the place of the Beis Hamikdash. Yaakov, when he fell asleep, he said, this is the house of Hashem. So one referred to it as a mountain, one referred to it as a field, and Yaakov referred to it as a house. So in Chassidus it explains why did each one refer to and describe the Beis Hamikdash in a different way. And the answer is because Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov represented the 3 attributes of Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes. So therefore, each one perceived the Beis Hamikdash from their perspective. Yaakov saw it as a house, Yitzhak saw it as a field, and Avraham saw it as a mountain. I won't go into the other 2, but let's talk about Avraham. A mountain, and brought down, based on this, Avram's main way of serving Hashem was with love. And Yitzchak's main primary way of serving Hashem was with yira, with awe of Hashem. So in the Tanakh, when Hashem talks about Avram, it says, Avram oyavi, Avram, the one that loved me. Even though Avram didn't only love Hashem, Avram feared Hashem as well. But his primary path of what was his main primary inspiration when he served Hashem, it was love. And love is compared to a mountain. Of course, there's a lot of details to this, but the general idea is a mountain physically is there's earth, which is straight, and a mountain is where there's earth that extends from the earth. Generally speaking, love, and the difference between love and fear is pulling back. Like when you're in awe of someone, where you're respecting someone, you're afraid of someone, you withdraw. Love is the opposite, where you extend yourself, you come closer to the thing that's outside of yourself. So the physical sort of structure of a mountain represents love. And what is it saying happened here? The love that Hashem has to Yidden is an infinite, unconditional love. A love that could never, ever be reversed. And a love that Hashem, his love for us is under all circumstances. It's unconditional love. Of course, unfortunately, in the time of Golus, we don't see it. Very often we don't feel it. It looks like Chas Hashem the opposite. But the reality is, based on what it says in Torah, there's a pasuk, Ahafti Estem Omer Hashem. Hashem's love for us is unconditional love. And that's why ultimately every Yid will have Olam Haba, every Yid will have Tchiyas HaMesim, and every Yid will ultimately do Tshuva because of Hashem's unconditional love. What happened when the Torah was given, Hashem revealed his love to us. In other words, Hashem allowed us that we should feel the love that he has. Even though humans normally cannot feel something that Hashem, who's infinite, feels, but at that time, Hashem gave us this gift, that we humans in a human body should be able to feel the infinite, unconditional love that Hashem has. What's the result of that? So there's a famous pasuk, number 5 on the list here. Kamayim aponim al aponim, Just like water reflects in a face, Kain Lev Adam Elodim, that's how one heart reflects another heart. Which means just like when you're standing in front of water and you show your face to the water, what do you see in the water? Your face and the expression on your face will be reflected in the water. So if I'm smiling, the face in the water will be smiling. If I'm frowning, the face in the water will be frowning. So too with love, that if a person has love for another person, the nature of it is that it arouses love in that person towards me. Doesn't mean that it's impossible to overcome that, but it means it's a natural reaction. That when you feel that someone loves you, it makes you feel positive towards them as well. It doesn't say it works with other attributes, but with love, that's the way it is. So when Hashem showed us his love and we felt his love, we were overcome with the same unconditional love for Hashem. So when they said Nasav and Ishma, it wasn't because they were forced, because they were threatened. It was the opposite, because they felt Hashem's love. They were overcome with love, and that love was not stubborn love, a love that knew no limits, no boundaries, a love that it's unlimited love. So what was wrong? Anybody could guess? Why was it incomplete?
It really wasn't from them.
Right, because it wasn't from them. In a sense, what we see here is that when Hashem showed them his love, it's as if Hashem's love was reflected, it's like a mirror, was reflected in their hearts. So even though they had a love, but it was really Hashem's love reflecting within them. It's almost like they were compelled to love him because Hashem showed them his love. What happened in the time of Purim? Did Hashem show them his love? Not only did he show his love, but it was any time in history that's called concealment, and that's why it's called Esther and everything else that we explained, that this was the most concealed time in history where Hashem showed the opposite. And yet the Yidden came out with love for him to the point that they're ready to give up their lives for their Jewish identity. And that means that the love came from them. So if that's the case, we can understand that it began when the Torah was given, but the process of Matan Torah was not complete. And when was the culmination? In the time of Purim. Any questions before we go to the next point?
About like if somebody is there an opinion like that, if somebody's not like forces, but like if they're the one to kind of I guess force like something, then like they have to keep by their words. Is there something that like by Hashem putting there was a small that was by Hashem putting or not for them like he was kind of like putting himself in that.
I don't know if you mean this. There are a lot of interpretations, so this is just one way of understanding it. But one of the things it says is Chassidus, and it's based on the words in Baal Shem Tov, is that one of the reasons Hashem put the mountain over our heads means that even if it comes to a time and a moment, that at that moment I don't feel like doing what I have to do, I should feel as if Hashem has the mountain over my head. In a sense, Hashem gave me the strength that even when I'm not up to it, I should be able to do it just because Hashem is God and he told me to do it. Be able to push myself. So it could be that's what you heard. I have one question, and the question is, so why did it have to be this way? Why couldn't Hashem have them accept him with true love from the start? 1,000 years. Yeah.
What I had was even putting the mountain over our head, I seen his love because he knew we weren't ready. He knew this is what was best for us. So it was like loving to say, I'm forcing you because almost like with a kid, if you pull them out of the street and if you hurt their arm.
Okay, I'll take the kid, Marshall, take it a little bit different than Marshall with the kid. And that is a baby, an infant doesn't do anything on its own. The mother feeds him, the mother bathes him, the mother dresses him, the mother carries him. But that doesn't go on for too long, hopefully. As the kid gets a little bit, starts growing, then he starts doing things on his own. And even then, there's two types of problems that can happen when a child is growing up. One where a parent abandons the child. I don't mean abandons them in the street, but it's not anything that you're on your own. The mother has no time for him. That child is going to grow up with a problem. Then you have another problem where it's the opposite, where the mother is on top of the child and doesn't give the child any sense of independence, doesn't let him think for himself, let him do anything for himself. So of course, it has to be the right balance. Not only right balance, but if you look at the way we grow up as children, it's actually a gradual process. As you get older, from 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, every stage, the parent is supposed to be moving away a little bit more, and at the same time still be with us, until we come to a point where we can stand on our own 2 feet and we're totally independent. In a sense, spiritually, that's the same thing with the Yidden. In the beginning, when we first were born as a nation, Hashem revealed himself to us. Hashem performed miracles. We had food coming down from Shemayim. We had the miracles that happened when we went into Israel with Yeshua, one miracle after another miracle after another miracle. And then we had prophets. But as the generations moved on, all these sort of revealed miracles became less and less and less. On one hand, the reason given is more deserving, more worthy. But on a deeper level, it was also because Hashem wanted us to be in a certain spiritual place on our own, not because he's revealing himself to us. So in a sense, yes, when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, there was no other way. We were infants then. So Hashem had to reveal himself to us, and he's the one who sort of provided us with this love for him. After 1,000 years later, we were ready through all the Torah and the mitzvahs and whatever it is that we did. Now we were at a point that we were able to have that love on our own. We matured. And that's why it wasn't just this time it didn't work and now it did work. That was the beginning of the process, and this was the end of the process. And the completion of the process. Yep. So we have just a few more little things. Hopefully we'll complete that tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. Okay. Look, everybody. You're welcome. Walk away from the table. That's pretty good. Baruch Hashem.
No, with the earrings, but I didn't have to wear them when it goes like also I sacrificed and I said, we'll see one. I like it. Normally don't find my friends that like actually go find me and they just go. On my face, all that. I'm so yes. Yeah. I'm like talking everybody. Yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you. Awesome. I don't actually have purpose for being here. Thank you, Rosie. Yeah, of course. That's okay. I'm so happy you were so fast. Not even upstairs. No, we're all like the milk was bad before you. I mean, I don't. I'll go upstairs. I feel like. I know. I'll make you better. I'm proud. 5 stars. Yes. Oh God. I am.
Where are you thinking? Where's your cousin?
It's a nice day, today. Yeah, I have to go.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
He came upstairs. How?
yeah, it's amazing.
How? And he just stood up and walked like nothing. Better than me. I wanted to like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you feel fun?
I love my phone again.